Okay. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
Hi, Linda. I'm great. And you?
Yeah, I'm really good. It's pouring rain here, but I'm
Mhm.
happy about that because my garden is happy. So I'm good. I'm good.
I love a cozy rainy evening. It's so snuggly.
Especially in the summer. I really like it in the
Mm.
summer.
It's nice here.
So,
It's been raining on and off here too, which is great. Um, for those tuning in, I'm in South Florida where the humidity is like bananas already this summer. So anytime it rains, which is pretty much every day, it's like a
it does,
welcome little,
right? Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
welcome
for
little.
like a chunk of time and then it gets clear again.
Yeah, and then it's like everything is dry and it feels like it didn't even happen. Because it's that hot. There's no evidence. There's no proof. And you know me, I love looking at evidence and proof. Um, and there's none of that. But anyway, I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm so happy about this topic this week.
Yeah, we decided to talk about food and how it affects your mental health, and then kind of bring it into the current what's in the news and just how people deal with stress and how your mental health is going to affect performance. All of that with the news with Simone Biles in particular, just as
Yeah.
front and center for everybody. So, but let's talk about food first because I think that's everybody eats. We're not all doing gymnastics, but we all eat. So let's go there first.
Sure, sure. Well, and I've been following, how she's been taking care of herself, and from what I've seen, she's been getting a lot of support, and I think it's really great to stand in your authenticity like that, which I know you're going to talk about some more of the mindset frameworks. But you're right. Here's the thing: there are so many different factors that play into supporting and strengthening our mental health, that certainly knowing your limits and being in tune with your body, knowing when you've taken on way too much that you can chew and being able to step away from that is essential. But what a lot of people don't understand is that when it comes to coping with stress and anxiety in general, that nutrition plays a really key role. And it's really fascinating, at least to me. I find it really fascinating. And I hope it interests some of the people here today, because when I explain this to my clients, and I work with a lot of people that are suffering predominantly with weight loss resistance. Many of them have been yo-yo dieting for decades. Many of them are at a place where they're experiencing some type of disease from the weight gain and the stress that their body's been under, whether it's high cholesterol, high blood pressure, hypertension, and most of the clients that I work with are either pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. So when we escalate like that, we're adding insult to injury, because now it's not even just our normal everyday stresses and anxieties affecting our mental health. Right now we have all of these big diagnoses. It's the end of the day and I'm tired. These big scary diagnoses that just add even more, right? Add even more of a mental burden, So when I first started working with clients, many of them, I would dare to say most of them, have never learned at some point in their life that proper nutrition and how they're fueling their body affects their mental health. Most people understand the link between diet and their weight, or diet and other types of disease. Most people have made that connection. That's kind of in the forefront of the nutrition conversation. But yeah, it is very powerful how you're eating. And here's why. And this goes back, a very long time ago. This isn't like a new discovery. It's just kind of quiet, right? So back in, I want to say 1886, 1887 was the first time that scientists were able to link an inflammatory response in the body from foods we're eating to our mood and to our mental health. So this is not anything new. This concept of inflammation, chronic inflammation in our body affecting our mental health. So people who are depressed have raised inflammatory markers. This is proven. You could read it on a graph. You can see the evidence right there. So, and as you know, Linda, a lot of those inflammatory responses relate to some of the work that I know you do with your clients with autoimmune. But what people don't realize is that inflammatory response plays a great role in depression, right? So these symptoms, these moods may not necessarily just like feeling bad, and it's just a feeling. Sometimes we feel bad, right? And we've talked about this before. You embrace an emotion. Emotion is neither good nor bad. It just comes and goes. It's not who you are. But when you are struggling with this inflammation, the most powerful thing that you can do is to I always say, throw the kitchen sink at it, right? So like Simone Biles did, she's stepping away, she's being mindful, she's tuning into her body, and she's putting herself first. But if science has shown us that eating an anti-inflammatory diet will improve, regulate, and balance your mood and ward off anxiety and depression, why aren't we talking about this more?
Right.
Because why aren't we doing everything we can do? Right? Because it's the sum of all of our lifestyle habits that really create that.
Right.
So with that said, and I know that you do a lot of work with anti-inflammatory, approaches when you're working with people with autoimmune. It's the same thing. What have you found when you're working with clients that come in? I would venture to say 90 to 95% of my clients who come to me with weight issues and prediabetes or type 2 diabetes are also suffering with anxiety and depression and unstable mental health, and even more so in the last 18 months with COVID than I've ever seen in serving people for years and years. What has your experience been?
Yeah, well, inflammation is one root cause of all disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, so the neurological diseases, and you can see the link with mood imbalances and disorders. So inflammation is always at play, and a big place where we get inflammation from is our diet. And I think the other thing I wanted to ask you, as the food expert that you are, is also, it's so interesting because I think that when we are depressed and anxious, we crave the foods that are causing the problem, right?
Right, because that's familiar. Because, right, when we are down, and we've talked about why this happens physiologically too, and just addictions, food addictions. But what happens when you're, and there's not one person that I know that hasn't, experienced a bout of depression or anxiety severely at one point in their life or another. But when you're feeling down, there's a real disconnect in knowing and being able to do, right? So it's like, you should go for a walk and move your body, because we all know that exercise is proven to improve your mood and get that serotonin and get those endorphins going. But when you're in the midst of it, when you're in the gray cloud, when you're in your full Eeyore, right? Who the hell has the mental strength to get up and go and do that? Oftentimes we wait until we're so far past the line that we don't even have the strength to drag ourselves up out of bed to do it. So if we can look at how we can support ourselves more consistently, then when we do have these inevitable dips, right? Because life is going to happen. It's going to throw us curveballs. It's going to throw us tragedies. It's going to throw us emergencies, right? That are all going to play a role in our mental health. But if we are able to practice certain habits with consistency, mainly eating a very anti-inflammatory diet is what my focus is, then when we have and experience these issues, the dip down is shallower, right?
Yeah.
And the recovery time is faster. So, where as you have the opportunity to dip low, if you've been practicing habits, and you dip down. And here's the thing, everybody wants to have a pill for it. And don't get me wrong, I have gone on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication in my life during very trying periods, and they help to get you over the hump. But like I tell my patients who are on metformin, for example, that is one thing to manage a symptom. That's not doing anything for the root cause of your issue. In the case of metformin, it's not resolving your insulin resistance, it's helping you balance your blood sugar. And the same thing with, depression and anxiety medication. It's help managing the symptom, but it's not doing anything to help that inflammation. I was talking with a client very recently who's been in a place where they're struggling and is far worse with some of the depression and anxiety medications induce suicidal ideation. They make it worse before it's better. So there's a time and a place to use tools and resources like that. But if we practice with consistency of what we know and give it everything we've got, give it the whole arsenal, including our diet, then when these high stress moments come, even if we choose to lean on something to help us sleep or help us just get over the hump, we're not going to dip down as deeper and stay there as longer. So, and when you're talking about inflammation in our diets come from endotoxins. And where do you think endotoxins come from, everybody? All the places right? The sodas, the processed foods, the diets that are really high in animal proteins and saturated fats and dairy and all of that stuff. So the most anti-inflammatory diet is eating some type of plant-based diet, right? Where we're focusing on eating whole, real foods, right? So I'm not talking about, just getting nutrients from a pill bottle at your local Walgreens, but actually eating whole plant-based foods, things that grow from the earth. And that helps mitigate that inflammatory response in our body. And that's it. And we're always going to have inflammatory responses. Anytime you catch a cold, right? That's an inflammatory response. Anytime, like I always tell people, like when you get a splinter and your finger gets red, right? And the blood rushes to it and it swells up, that's an inflammatory response. That's an acute inflammatory response. Innately, it is helping your body. But when it's chronic, that's when you see all of the things that Linda mentioned. And that's when you see higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety. And then once you're in that place, it makes it even harder to crawl out. So one of the best things that I recommend anybody try is just start working, pick a micro habit. We always talk about with my clients, micro habits. Now, don't change your diet overnight because this is completely 180, because the stress of doing that alone is going to hinder your mental health, right? But pick a micro habit. Say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start eating one dark leafy green salad every day. I'm going to start having, one piece of fruit with my breakfast every day. Pick something small. So with that said, and I know I wanted to share some practical things that people can start to maybe focus on in efforts to start small. And when we're talking about stress and anxiety, there's really 4 big nutrients that I'm going to focus on that really play a part. And I'm going to share, I was talking to Linda about it too. I'm going to share all of my sources in the comments. I'll come back later once this posts because I don't know how to do it right now. But I'm going to post all my sources because I want to encourage all of you to start looking at the research for for yourselves and educating yourselves and empowering yourselves because it's going to make it that much easier for you to make, good decisions for yourself and your mental health. So firstly, magnesium. I want to bring my notes up here because I made lists of all my favorite foods that have these things too. So research shows that magnesium plays a role in depression in a very big way. And that if you have an imbalance, if you're not getting enough dietary magnesium, that it also plays a big role in anxiety. So, that's one of the things that I like to have my clients focus on. And you're going to love this first one because raw cacao, dark chocolate, super high in magnesium. So that's always, That's right. That's a great thumbs up. So, that's always a nice one to have up your sleeve. Again, everything in a place of balance. But things like avocado, legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains, very high in magnesium. So pick something from that list that appeals to you and find a way to start adding it. Another big one.
Wait, before you go on, Julie asks what kind of there's actually a lot of comments that we haven't had a chance to get to.
Sure.
But while you're in magnesium, Julie says what kind. My first thought is if you're eating foods that are good sources of magnesium, a good variety, you're going to get all the kinds of magnesium.
Yeah, that's the idea. There's not like one particular type, right? A lot of times with supplementation, with like drinks like Natural Calm, which is a magnesium drink, which is great. Again, I'm not making any recommendations for anybody in terms of supplements, but I believe that's magnesium citrate. But the point is that when we're getting it from food, you're able to get that variety, right? And that's what's important. That's what's really important.
Yeah. And magnesium is also good for migraine headaches. So I think it's interesting that it's good for moods, for depression, anxiety, and migraines. I mean, I think something like 266 different things in the body require magnesium at a good level. So it's going to
repair. Yeah. In fact, I just recently brought my 5-year-old she's old enough to be in dance camp now. So she's been super excited. But these kids, they're dancing for like 5-6 hours a day. So her little legs, she's coming home and she's tired. And I recently found this great company that I like locally that makes creams and lotions that have magnesium that you can put on topically. And I've been rubbing her little legs with it each night. And I've got to tell you, she's noticed such a difference and she's sleeping better. So, again, something to throw the kitchen sink at. What I don't like for people to do and what I never recommend is just say, hey, I'm going to write down these 4 things that Taylor says and go to the supermarket and buy it in a pill, because that's not your body does not assimilate it the same way and use it the same way. And it's nowhere nearly as beneficial as just eating it straight from the source. So
yeah. And the other thing to know about magnesium is you go through it faster when you're under stress. So if you are in a time of life that's very stressful, you're going through a divorce, you're under a deadline at work and there's a huge project or something, you want to bump up your magnesium because you're going to go through it. Your body needs it from the stress load.
Yeah. So that's a big one. And that's an easy one because that's in foods that are, nothing obscure, right? Everybody's enjoyed an avocado, nuts and seeds, have a handful of nuts, chia seeds, hemp seeds, sunflower seeds. Oh my God, sun butter. I just introduced one of my clients recently to sun butter and she's like sending me messages multiple times a day. Like, this stuff's so good. I'm like, all right, well, pump the brakes. Don't have a whole jar a day, but it is delicious. So another one that is great to focus on, another nutrient that there's been a lot of research on, is vitamin B6. So B6 is extremely effective when combined with magnesium in adults who are battling severe stress. So studies have shown that women who consume more B6 and have those stores readily and replenished every day are less likely to experience anxiety. Low B6 has also been associated with panic attacks. I don't know, anybody at home have a panic attack? I had a panic attack one time when I was living up in New York still, and I was in the car driving home from a girlfriend's house, and it started, I thought I was having a heart attack. And at a red light, I was like taking my bra off, like the pressure was building up so bad, took the seatbelt off, drove myself right to St. Francis Hospital, and had my mom meet me there. And it was debilitating. I thought I was dying, and I have met so many people that experience panic attacks like that regularly. So, if you're somebody who's experienced a lot of anxiety and panicky things, B6 might be your micro habit to focus on. And B6 is found in certain fruits, bananas, right? Bananas also has magnesium too, so that's like a twofer. That's a little twofer for you. Papayas, cantaloupes, starchy vegetables, chickpeas, very high in B6. Who doesn't like hummus? How easy is that? Or get a can of chickpeas, rinse them off, throw them in a salad. Dark leafy greens is another one. You're going to see dark leafy greens, by the way, spoiler alert, is all four.
Yeah. Just eat your greens. That's it.
Just do it, people. Just Popeye's not an idiot, okay? He knew what he was talking about. And then that brings us to the next thing is iron. Speaking of leafy greens and speaking of spinach, right? Because spinach is got a super high concentration of non-heme iron, and I'm going to leave heme iron, animal-based iron versus plant-based iron, to a whole nother topic. But iron is a known, low iron is a known contributor to anxiety and depression in a very big way. So always looking to get more forms of whole food plant-based iron. And what you want to do when you keep in mind when you're eating a plant-based form of iron to make it more bioavailable for your body, to make it easier for your body to assimilate it, is you want to try to eat it with something that's high in vitamin C. So think like spinach salad with citrus dressing, or, you know, spinach in a smoothie with some mango, which is high in vitamin C. So other things high in iron that are also anti-inflammatory, right? Because we all know beef is very high in iron, but beef is also a very inflammatory food. So we're looking to do both, right? So dark leafy greens, of course, beans, raisins, super high in iron, things like peas, apricots are another dried fruit too that are very high in iron, so that's an easy one. And then of course, last but not least, and Linda and I have talked about this a lot, fiber, right? That gut health is critical to your mental health and to your mood. So feeding your body, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, almost every client I've ever worked with in my whole life has come to me with some type of fiber deficiency. People aren't eating even a third as much fiber as they should be eating to really optimize their health. So fiber, highest in things like beans, broccoli, berries, again, avocados, apples, an apple a day, people. Make that a micro habit for real, right? Whole grains, because we know fiber is really essential to reducing anxiety. And one of the ways it does that is because it helps to balance your blood sugar and it feeds that gut bacteria. So I'll get off of my not that horse, but I hope that helps people, because with simple shifts like that, you know, you can really set yourself up for success and really take care of yourself, because we eat 3-4 times a day.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's wonderful. And it's great to just like have a list of foods, especially as you're saying them. I'm like, oh, when was the last time I had papaya? Oh, you know, I know you could whip up homemade hummus probably in your sleep. But, you know, like I try to do homemade stuff. So, you know, just rattling off that list, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a whole overhaul. And that's one of the things that I work on with people, is just step by step, right? Baby steps. You don't have to overhaul your whole diet overnight. You can just start by adding more things to your plate. Instead of worrying about what to take away, just focus on what you can add. So if you can add some of those anti-inflammatory foods that are proven to help support your optimal mental health, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
You know, and you know, it's so interesting, because I know you're a big proponent of plant-based diets. And so I was going through this course on midlife hormones, and the recommendation for post-menopause is to increase your protein. So I increased my protein, but I did it a lot, probably, I'm sure more than what you would have done, from meat sources, just because it was easy. Like, and I noticed my moods really kind of crashing. Like I was like, I just like, I don't know. I just noticed the impact on my mood, and I was like, what's different? And so I switched it up, and then, you know, just went, I got some hemp protein powder, and I did two smoothies a day instead of adding like a meat source. And it shifted everything in terms of how I was feeling.
So here's the thing, and I'm not surprised to hear that, unfortunately, because the endotoxins in animal products caused a burst of inflammation that's measurable within hours. That's it. Just within a couple of hours, your inflammation shoots up. And it's a direct correlation. It's not like after years of inflammation, depression is the symptom and anxiety is the symptom. It's the higher the inflammation, the more depressed and low you're going to feel, and the more anxiety you're going to suffer with. It happens every time. This is why oftentimes, when we have inflammation from being sick, you just feel down mentally too, because your body's in a chronic state of inflammation. So just think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah. So some more comments have come in. Are green juices good? And, Taylor is the nutritionist, so I'll let you answer that. But to my mind, they're good. However, you want to make sure you get the fiber, which you're not going to get if you're just doing juicing, right?
Yeah. Again, and it's everything in moderation. So here's the thing. When we are in a period of chronic stress and you are only going to be consuming green juices, you're going to really be accelerating your body's natural detoxification process. And at first, that's going to make things look a whole hell of a lot scarier before they look better. And I used to host, juice detox retreats for years and years and years. And I stopped doing them because what I found is we were getting people who, for the other 95% of their year, right, were just eating a free-for-all, not taking care of themselves, heaps of coffee, heaps of alcohol, burning themselves out, working to the ground, eating fast food because it's convenient. They come on a juice fast and suddenly we're just flushing everything, and they're getting migraines and breakouts and they're exhausted and putting people through that. I'm not in the business of making people feel worse. I want people to feel better. So with that said, always, if you're going to go on a course like that, to do it with somebody who has experience, who can guide you. But certainly having a green juice daily is going to be helpful. But again, like Linda said, that you're going to get a really big burst of nutrients from that. When you're doing green juices, you always want to remember to focus on vegetables. I will say that. And that could be an acquired taste for some people. So sometimes they're like, oh, we'll just add more fruit, more fruit, more fruit. But here's the thing, that sugar is going to spike your blood sugar, and then you're going to feel like poop when it comes down. So you're going to feel even worse. So the general rule that I tell people is, if you're getting used to green juices, pick 1 cup of fruit per 5 cups of vegetables. And a nice fruit to choose that's on the low end of the glycemic index is an apple. So I always say start there, because that adds some sweetness, but it's not going to, put it over the top. Or even a lemon. A lemon adds a lot of nice natural sweetness without adding too much sugar. And green juices can be very health supportive, but like Linda said, and like we talked about, that fiber is critical. So you want to make sure that you're getting plenty of fiber in your day as well. And when we're making juice, we are stripping all of the fiber away. So it's fine if you're doing it once a day or every other day, but make sure you're getting fiber as well. That's really important.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Did you, and somebody earlier, it's gone now, the comment, but I saw, could you post those items? So I think it was maybe some of the foods you were rattling off as sources for the different nutrients you were talking about.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'll make a list. And for anybody who's just joining too, I'm going to add a few of the studies that I'm citing, because I'm just speaking in generalities. But if you're interested in learning more, if any of these things, like, if you suffer from panic attacks or migraines, like Linda said, you could read up about that study about magnesium that I'm referring to. There's multiple studies, but I'll put some of the most recent ones for you in the comments as well, for anybody who's interested in educating and empowering themselves. I could read those things all day. Most people roll their eyes at me like, yeah, thanks, I'll pass. But I want them to be available to you just in case you're interested.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love that stuff too. So yeah. And then I think another part of this, and we've been on for a while, so we won't, maybe we'll talk about this more at another time, but I did want to mention it just because I put it in when I created the post about Simone Biles and all of that. And, you know, the frame that I'm looking in currently at people and their health is their stress load. When is their bucket overflowing? How does that happen? How does it show up? And what are the things that would fill your bucket? And some of those things happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or 30 years ago, and they're still in your body. And then when you are under stress, and I would guess that being in the Olympics is a bit stressful, especially when you're the one that everybody's hanging their hat on, like you're the one. So there's a stress load there. And if you have things that have not moved through and you haven't released, now that additional stress is going to show up as more than you can bear. So I think that's worth mentioning. You know, Simone being in the news right now, she, you know, it makes me sad because I see some people really bashing her, like,
I haven't seen that yet.
A little bit. I mean, you know, and I think to myself, she has proven and shown herself capable and strong and tough over and over and over again. So I don't see anything there that you could remotely, I don't think anybody should be bashed, even if they haven't been tough, but she certainly has been.
It's easy to bash somebody from the safety of the internet when you're not living her experience. Because let's not forget, even just a few short years ago, she was the face of, you know, leading the charge against all of the sexual assault and sexual abuse that was going on in her industry. You know, so aside from her being this glorious leader in gymnastics that we all look to and cheer on, she's also leading the charge in a lot of others. Speaking of, you know, past traumas, good God.
Right, right. And so the things that are going to bring the trauma up in your body is when you're in situations that remind you. So some of her trauma has to do with the doctor around who was working with the gymnast. So I can imagine now she's in competition. He was probably always there when they were in competition. So if they got injured, he worked on them. And so right away, her body memory is probably back in trauma. And I'm sure she's done a great job on working on it. And she clearly has, because she has the wherewithal to say, I can't do this. This is what I can, and this is what I can't do. And that's being authentic to yourself. Our culture is set up with a lot of cultural expectations and cultural standards, and people don't feel free to say what's okay for them and what's not, especially, you know, in this kind of situation, like our country sent you, you're representing the team. And she has the wherewithal, which says to me strength of character, to be authentic.
And that she's done the work. She's done the work to be able to stand in integrity for herself in a culture that encourages us to push ourselves. What was the gymnast? Oh my goodness, Carrie. I remember being small and watching it. The gymnast who landed with the broken ankle.
Oh.
Many Olympics ago, I was a little girl, but like that's encouraged. And she was like 16 or something insane at the time. She was a child. Anybody who knows who that is, maybe mention in the comments, or I'm going to Google it as soon as we get off because it's going to drive me bananas.
Strugs?
Yes. And they pushed her and pushed her and pushed her, and she was wincing and grimacing in pain with broken bones to keep going.
Right. So having the sense of self and your identity to be strong enough to say, I'm not going to do it. Even when I'm here in competition, I'm the one expected to bring the trophy home for my country, but I'm not okay. So I'm going to speak up. Like, that's a great example of where in your life are you not okay, and where are you not speaking up about it.
And where are you not prioritizing yourself? Where are you prioritizing expectation and other people's needs? And we've all been there. So there's no shame in the conversation, but it's a beautiful opportunity, like Linda said, to take a moment and press pause and see, because these things don't happen in these isolated events, right? We're often choosing to say yes when we really mean no in many other ways throughout our day, throughout our lives. That's the habit. That's the neural pathway.
Exactly. Right. So I'm guessing, I mean, I know nothing about it, but I'm guessing she's got some stored stuff that's showing up in the heat of competition, and she's clearly strong enough to say what's okay for her. But the other point, so there were 3 points I wanted to point out, like relate this to a regular human being. This isn't a commentary on Simone. This is not about Simone. This is about what it is to be a human being. And we all go through, it may not be the Olympics. It may be, conversations that are going on in your kitchen, but where are you showing up authentically to yourself? Where is trauma from the past going to all of a sudden be more than your body can bear? So for a lot of people, it might be chronic illness over time, or fatigue that's pulling you down. For her, this is a high peak thing. So in this situation and environment of the Olympics, she just felt like this is not, I can't do this. And the third thing was, so I was reading about her this afternoon, and it said there was some move that she was going to do. I can't remember the name of it. I should probably.
Oh, the twist. I saw that too. It's actually known in the gymnast community called like the twisties or something. It's like an anxiety that is specific to doing some of these particularly challenging twists and jumps.
Oh, that's not what I was going to say. It's some move that she does all the time in routines, like some double blah, 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 flip over backhand. I don't know. Some move that she can do in her sleep. And yet she went to do it and she balked, and she actually cut it short. Like it's supposed to be, I'm making this up, 2 twists, and she only did 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's where, like your mind is so powerful, because it is a move she can do in her sleep. She's probably done it thousands of times. And yet in this place of, I'm not okay, she can't perform. She can't. She had to cut it back because she's not okay. So it shows the power of the mindset, your thinking, how it's going to govern even what your body can do and what you know what I'm saying? Like she can do this skill.
She trying to protect her in that moment. And thank God that she was listening, because so many of us are no longer in tune and listening to our bodies and what our needs are. And I talk to people all day long who find this particular type of struggle when it comes to, mindless eating or stress eating. Right? It's like in that moment, it just overtakes you. But when you're able to be mindful and listen, what does my body really need? I'm not hungry. I'm exhausted. I need to take a nap. Or I'm not hungry. I'm just lonely and I'm really sad and I'm really looking for some type of connection. And being able to decipher what our body is telling us in those moments is so important. But it does require work.
Yeah.
And listening.
Yep. So something that she could probably do mindlessly became something that she couldn't do because she's over the top of her barrel. And that's what happens in our lives is our barrels get so filled up that we're not going to perform well. We're not going to be creative in problem solving. We're not going to be receptive in relationship and communication. It may not be a double back twist, humana, that we're not performing well, but we're going to not perform well somewhere, somehow, some way when we're maxed out. And that's just how it is. So I think kudos to her for being the stand that she is for what feels right for her. But I just wanted to include that in our conversation because we
so important. Oh yeah.
And the food part of it, but also all of this. And I don't think people feel as free, especially with cultural expectations, the standard, what we see in our young people, the level of depression, because there's an expectation of the right school, the best scores, you better create create a resume that looks stunning so you can apply to the best colleges, at least here in
For
the
all
North.
these externals, right? So you can achieve all these externals instead of prioritizing what feels good for you, what
Right.
feels like happiness for you.
Right.
But when we're young, you know, we're doing what we're learning, right? We don't know how to make that judgment call. Somebody has to teach us how to listen for that.
Right. But even like you could look at little leagues, 3rd grade, 1st grade, 4th grade, and the pressure on kids to be on the winning team, you know, to just all of it.
Oh my gosh. My brother is a natural athlete. He's just like one of those people that's like, sub him into any sport and he's like the star player. But I remember when we were young and he was playing soccer, one of the parents on the sidelines yelling, kill him, kill him. And I remember like being appalled, and my mom kind of stood up and was like, you know, they're 7. Let's keep that in mind.
I know.
They're 7. And that was like my first taste of like, wow, like I did sports because I liked it, because it felt good. I had never been on a team that was quite so competitive, but at 7, you know, the travel teams, it's like, you know, it's competitive to the point where parents are, you know, screaming at their children from the sidelines. And then it sucks the happiness right out of that activity. Right. And then you're doing it for somebody else's expectation.
Right. So it starts on very basic levels throughout, in my opinion, throughout our society, throughout our culture. And there's not a lot of leeway in forgiveness and compassion when people decide to do it somewhat differently or decide to give up on something that they had started. And that puts an incredible amount of pressure. So we're seeing young people who in amounts, staggering numbers, on different medications, middle schoolers on anti-anxiety, you know, high schoolers on depression, kids who have tried suicide. It was before the pandemic, because I was still going daily into the wellness center where I worked. But that year, I guess it might have been 2019, maybe 2018. I usually try to remember, was Charlotte still here or not? Like then I can get my bearings, but I can't remember. But there were 6 suicides, not suicide attempts, suicides of high school kids in like within 2 or 3 towns. So
it's a heartache. It's just a heartache.
To be 16 years old and think there is no reason for me to keep living is just unbelievable, you know. And
if we taught some of the incredible techniques, for example, like you teach, on how to be the observer, be witness, right? How to have that metacognition and understand and look at our thoughts and look at how we can shift beliefs. If we had more education in that, if we had education on how to eat to support it, if we had education in getting people, you know, up and out and in the sunshine, you know, going to the gym is not just about keeping a toned body, right? If we emphasized all of these things as contributing factors for greater health and happiness, then you're in the right type of mindset to be able to decide for yourself without feeling that pressure. You're going to be able to be objective and say, hey, is this something I'm doing, or is it because like Steve said I should do it?
Yeah, I think we should be teaching in the schools, and then we'll wrap it up, because I just realized it's like close to 8 o'clock.
I was chatting with you.
We have fun.
Continued conversation. And for anybody who wants to, we did talk a lot about, when we talked about in our 2-part sleep conversation, we talked about a lot of things that can really help with stress management and sleep and help with mood. And also when we talked about how to bolster gut health a couple months ago too. Just some other practical, actionable things to do too, if anybody's interested.
So my last thought was, you know, I was having this conversation, I think with a client actually, but I think we should be teaching our kids, like in the curriculum, it should be how to balance your checkbook, how to live in a budget, how to eat, and cook well, like cook whole foods, and how to meditate, manage your stress, and how to communicate powerfully. Like
Oh,
if that was a part of the curriculum from first grade on up, you know,
communicate with authenticity. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, if those were the things that kids got out of school with, those skills, maybe not so much speaking Mandarin and Spanish and German, I mean, like I'm just trying to pick something, or
Yeah.
chemistry or whatever. So you get my point. So, okay. Well,
Practical life skills. Practical life skills. Not
life
something that's
skills.
measured by an ACT score or an SAT score, which, mind you, I did excellent on and then promptly never thought about it again for the rest of my life.
Right, right, right. So, all right. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom
Thank you
around
for
your.
talking about this. It's so
Oh,
nice and powerful to have, a conversation with somebody such as yourself too, who has so many great tools, and you've shared personally with me so many wonderful ways to help be more introspective and really decipher what it is that I want, what am I taking on from other people, and how I can stand for myself, and recover from those past beliefs that happened from traumas, like Linda said, years ago.
yeah. And on that note of being authentic, we've decided that Thursday nights we're going to switch our time to earlier. Instead of 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to do, what time are we doing it, Taylor?
I'm not sure. Earlier in the day.
Earlier in the day. So that's going to feel better for us. And if you're not able to make it live, then just look for the posts and they stay there. You can watch them after. So, so that'll be starting next week. There'll be a different time. Okay. All right,
Thanks,
my friend. Yes. All right.
Thanks, everybody. I can't see the comments, but thanks to everybody who shows up and gets involved and contributes to the conversation. It's so nice to have such powerful community, right? That's another big thing to help bolster mental health. Surrounding yourself with a forward-thinking, like-hearted community. So I'm thankful.
Yeah, for sure.
Thankful to share that with you.
Okay. Have a great night.